It is Thursday, the 21st of October, and I am Natalie Kennerley. I'm not Technical Services Development Manager. I've got my other hat on there. I'm the Director for the National Technician Development Centre. I wear lots of hats, sometimes it gets a bit confusing. So welcome to our event today. For those of you that don't really know much about the NTDC, we were established back in 2017, and at the time, we had a different label. We were called the Technical Development and Modernisation Unit, and we've since become the NTDC. Originally, we received funding by the Higher Education Funding Council for England, which is now, as you know, the Office for Students. And we were set up to provide expertise and tools to HE and related sectors to create that sustainable future for technical services and staff. And some of that activity includes increasing the visibility and recognition of staff nationally. The NTDC itself brings expertise and tools to support the development and formal technical career pathways and embeds those strategies within institutions. And the aims are to develop and modernise those individual technical skill sets, and that allows us to support institutions in fulfilling the skills gaps that they may have and providing training and development opportunities to support that activity as well. So, some of you may have heard of us before, some of you might not have. You'll have all probably heard of the technician commitment. So just to be really clear, organisations don't need to be a partner affiliate of the NTDC to be a signatory of the technician commitment, and vice versa. Organisations do not need to be a signatory or supporter of the technician commitment to engage with the services of the NTDC. I think we're all working to the same hymn sheet, really. We're all trying to increase that visibility of technical staff and support career progression alongside training and development opportunities, but there is a distinct difference between ourselves and the technician commitment. So, quick introduction to the team. So you can see along this top line, we've got 10 members of the core team that are here all the time, and then we are supported by 16 specialist advisors. We're really grateful to those specialist advisors. They are volunteers. They do give up their time freely to support us. We've got a very wide range of people now from all sorts of areas. So we've got people that support us with professional registration, with apprenticeships, with the arts, with organisational development, with sustainability, and lots more as well. So it's really good to have those guys on board. So I wanted to talk to you about some activity that we have been doing over the last 12 months. So you may or may not have known about some of this. So the first one is around a project that we've been doing with the IST, and it's been looking at the professional registration for technical staff. So for a long time, we've had staff that have been able to access STEM sort of professional registration, and the IST supports that as well as the arts as well. But we did some research a while ago and discovered that actually the arts sector don't particularly feel that included in this. So we've been doing a lot of work with the IST to create a bespoke register for arts technicians, and that is almost nearing completion, to be honest. We've done so much work around that. We've actually got a framework, and we're just in the latter stages of that before we can hopefully launch. So that's really good news for all arts people and IT people. As you know, we'll probably have heard about the survey that we run. The survey is one of our main tools that we have. It's been with us from our creation, really. Lots of you will have already used the survey within your institutions. That continues to grow. We've also got another tool that you may or may not have heard of called CPD Central, and that is a way to capture continuing professional development, and it links very nicely to professional registration, so you can use that tool and upload your evidence really quickly and easily. It's also a really good tool if you are an individual that manages or supervises apprentices or other members of staff. You can set them tasks through that portal. It's gaining quite a lot of traction. If that's something that you think you might be interested in, please do contact us and we can tell you more about that. Over the last year, we've been really busy supporting other activities, and one of those is the Technician Partnership Conference, which is partnership with Newcastle. Some of you may have been to that conference already this year. That took place in summer. Really exciting thing for us this year is the Technician Development Fund. This is something that we launched last year. It's met with a good deal of enthusiasm. So this year we look to expanding that. This is just a snapshot of one of those opportunities. But we've got two out there at the moment. The one you can see on the screen at the moment is around digital technologies. So trying to call out to the technical community to help us with this digital technology, really. So we're looking for individuals who can come up with some innovative ideas on how technicians might support teaching and research within their institutions, and that then will help us with our ambitions as well. I feel that we've got quite a healthy pot of money there. It's one pot and it's just one amount, £2,500. Seems quite a decent amount, but when you think about digital technology, I'm very mindful that the costs do ramp up on that. The deadlines for anyone who wants to submit an application for this funding to do a project is the 31st of October, so not long.
Yeah, see you later, cheers Dave.
Alongside that, we have got another pot of funding, 4 pots, and that is for the promotion of technical careers to the next generation. So we're looking at widening participation and outreach activities, and there's 4 smaller pots there. Each of those is £500, and again the closing date for that is the 31st of October. So again, please do look on the website if you want further information about that one. You might have seen at the beginning or midway through COVID, we launched a report on the impact of COVID-19 on HE. Again, you can access that through our website if you've not seen that already. Light, we were people that presented at this event this year. I think we had a couple of sessions that we did, and that was online. Some of you may have been to that. I know that the HETS in-person event is coming up very soon in November, which is really good stuff. I'm really pleased to support that activity. A little while ago, we also launched a report for Black History Month on the diversity of technicians in higher education. You may have seen that one. This one is really new, the NTDC Technician Survey Benchmarking Report. So if you're with us all day, you might be coming to one of those sessions later on that highlights that new activity that we've been doing. And that is a piece of partnership work between MMU, which is the other hat I wear, Sheffield Hallam University, Reading University and the NTDC. And we're really proud that we had an intern from MMU to work on that project. And you'll hear from Tyler later on today. Again, we've got another partnership forum event down there at the bottom. And then some of you may already know about the work that we do with LEAF. We're really keen to promote the work that LEAF does, and we've actually got a pilot project going at the moment that looks at how that project is going and evaluates it and makes recommendations. And we've got a number of institutions that are working with us on that particular initiative at the moment. And then last but not least, we've got our tech meet. Some of you will have been to those sessions already. They run every month. Sometimes, whole holiday periods, we do pull back a little bit and make those a bit less frequent, but they've been met with lots of enthusiasm and engagement, usually on a topic of interest to the whole technical community. So if you're interested in showcasing what you do at your university, or you've got something interesting to tell the world, the technical community, please get in touch and we might be able to get you a slot there to present, which would be really nice. So just moving on, I'm nearly finished now. Another highlight for us this year has been Heated. So Heated are now our training arm of the NTDC. It's going from strength to strength. You can see at the top there, we've got a bit of headline news. 27 courses run this year, 47 institutions, 214 learners, which equates to 1,230 CPD hours, which is quite phenomenal, I think, considering that we've not been with Heated for very long. So that will continue to grow. We very much take on board what you, the technical community, want from Heated. So if you're looking through our portfolio of offerings and there's something that's not there that you feel you might like to see, please do let us know and we can work on creating that course for you. Everything that I've talked about so far is underpinned by our NTDC mission statement, and I'm not going to go through all this now because it's too long, but if you want to have a look at that, you can access it through our web pages. Everything that we do is kind of centered around this, and it does provide a real insight into what our aims and ambitions are. So please do have a look at that if you get a chance. And then finally, to finish off, ending on a real positive note, next year we are hoping to do an in-person event with a nice lunch and lots of speakers in a nice venue. And at the moment, that's looking like it's going to be the week beginning the 12th of September. So please do hold on to that date for your diaries. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and move on to our keynote presentation. So throughout the presentation that our keynote speaker is going to deliver, if you have any questions that you want to ask throughout that, if you pop those in the chat, Sarah's going to be our chat manager today and she'll be collating those and you'll get the opportunity to ask those at the end of the session. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Lenny Koh. Lenny's going to talk on the topic of reaching net zero carbon campus. Lenny is the founder and director of the Advanced Resource Efficiency Centre, and she's head of Communications, Partnership and Internationalisation of Energy at the University of Sheffield. Her research is world leading and is recognised for its scientific novelty, and it's generated scientific impacts for societies, governments, industries, from manufacturing to services globally. She's an established strategic partnerships with industry leaders across the sector on supply chain sustainability, digital transformation, circular economy, carbon neutrality, and net zero transformation. So over to you, Lenny, if you want to share your screen. I'm going to turn my camera off, so if we can just all make sure we've got our microphones muted.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Terry, Sarah, and everyone in the NTDC team for this opportunity for me to share some of my research thoughts and findings in relation to reaching net zero, especially in the context of higher education sector, campus, and also the role of campus users and technical staff within this context. Within the higher education sector, there is already established target that we will need to reach in order to achieve our sustainability agendas across the board. This cut across all of the institutions in the UK and internationally. So Sheffield University, we are doing exactly the same thing. So we have established our own commitment in terms of how we are going to achieve sustainability by 2030 and 2038. As you can see here, on this slide. So we will be using specific research expertise within the universities and wider to tackle these important challenges and also embed education for sustainable development into all thought courses in the 5 years. What is quite interesting recently that happened within our initiative in this domain is we have switched our supplier to a 100% renewable renewable energy sources for the campus. So this is a great news for us in terms of our commitment in achieving sustainability and net zero agenda for the university. And of course, in order to do this, we should not forget about the travel dimension as well. So there are a lot of activities and policies being put in place in terms of travels and also other operations related to how we can reduce our carbon emission and environmental footprint in that regard. So these are just some of the highlights that we do at Sheffield. But I think one of the biggest challenges is also understanding the Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. So between 2005 and 2019, the university cuts its Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon emission by 47%, which is quite a significant number. And this exceeds our targeted 43% reduction over the same period. And even while our estate is actually growing by 23%. So it is quite a challenge to actually maintain that balance of growing our activities, but also at the same time maintaining reduction in terms of our CO2 emissions, in this particular case, Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. While this has been partly due to wider grid decarbonization, improvement have also been achieved by us investing heavily in energy savings technologies and measures, including, for example, LED lighting, sensors, new boilers, heating and cooling controls, and energy efficiency equipment across our campus in various buildings. As a large research-intensive university in the Russell Group, and we do have large associated Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 2 emissions due to energy we consume, and due to the many laboratory and cutting-edge research facilities that we host and operate, and which means it will require specific operational conditions and energy-intensive equipment. This is why I think there is a significant role that technicians and staff related to this area can play in order to help achieving this particular sustainability agenda. We also have a number of old and listed buildings, and as we know, old and listed buildings, they may not be very energy efficient, and as a city campus and large-scale on-site low-carbon energy generation is not practical. So within this particular context, we also need to think creatively in terms of what is the best way to maintain energy efficiency and reducing our carbon emission for old and listed buildings on campus. So we talk about Scope 1 and Scope 2, but Scope 3 emission is the one that is most challenging. And Scope 3 emissions add a further level of complexity, and they are very difficult for institutions to control, and yet are much larger than Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Usually Scope 3 emissions happens across the supply chain. Sometimes we don't have any visibility or direct control in terms of how that is being produced and managed. So I think it requires a lot of creative and partnerships activities to be put in place in order to ensure a good reduction of Scope 3 emissions, such as procurement, sustainable procurement, for instance. The university has much less ability to directly influence Scope 3, which are embedded in the complex global supply chain, so often many times removed from the university directly. So this makes them very difficult to track and reduce. So despite this difficulty, it is still very important for us to understand this Scope 3 emission and then to reduce them. So I think the idea of sustainable campus is not just about controlling Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon emissions on site, but also understanding the wider emission, i.e. Scope 3 emission as well across the supply chain. So these are some of the net zero carbon activities that we have been doing and have achieved on campus as part of this agenda. So for instance, we have switched the university pure electricity supply to 100% renewable electricity supply. So this is a huge achievement. And we also divested our endowment investment away from fossil fuel activities to renewable activities. Introducing further support and guidance on business travel to support an inclusive, sustainable and well-being oriented approach to international travel and research. As we know, there are a lot of potential research and travel activities related to global activities that we are doing in this particular domain. So how can we achieve a sustainable way of achieving that goal while still maintaining a minimum reduction of carbon emission? For instance, trade-off and other more sustainable activities like online meetings, etc., which can be carried out in conjunction with necessary travel as well at the same time. Electrify our fleet vehicles on campus is also a very important intervention. And currently we have about 46% of our fleet made up of electric vehicles, EV, and other low carbon alternatives. And we aim to reach 100% as soon as possible. And this is also a big initiative in order to ensure that a city campus universities such as us will reduce and contribute to clean air and CO2 reduction for our city and city region. Invest in active travel infrastructure is also very important, and this connects to the university and the wider city agenda. And we continue to offer staff cycle to work scheme, including e-bikes, refurbish and sell cut prices bikes to students, and support a sustainable travel incentive app run by Better Points, offering rewards for walking, cycling and public transport usage. So interventions, in this particular area is not just about hardcore technical solution, but also process-oriented and soft solutions such as walking, cycling, in providing infrastructure that are very convenient and comfortable and safe for us to do this. So we are working closely with the City Council in order to ensure that this facility and infrastructures are in place, and the e-bikes facilities are very popular and also very popular amongst our students community. And we do work very closely with our students union in our sustainability agenda between us at the university as well as our student union for Sheffield. Energy efficiency and a sensible approach to space management throughout our retrofitting and estate development activities is also a major intervention as part of this sustainability program, because we have multiple buildings, whether these are lecture theaters, old building or new buildings, and therefore energy efficiency and sustainable way of operating them is very important, especially in relation to their space management and how best to ensure they have minimum environmental impact to the environment. Plant 2 trees for everyone, for anyone which needs removing on our estates, so that our campus help clean our air and remains a habitat for local wildlife. So we are also committed to biodiversity and clean air initiative. So this nature-based solution is also something that has been embedded within our sustainability activity. So as you can see, there are mixtures of different kind of solutions that we are working in order to achieve the sustainability goal within the university. And as part of this, of course, achieving net zero carbon campus is very important, because campus are the main space where students and staff are doing their day-to-day operation. This includes daily operations, research, and teaching. And this includes professional staff, academic staff, technicians. So as in any universities in our sectors, we will have massive infrastructures and buildings such as library, computing facility, laboratory for our scientists, for our medics, for our engineers, for instance, big lecture theaters, small lecture theaters, meeting rooms, and so on. You can imagine this, and you can name it. And these are all energy, they consume energy. Some of them are very energy intensive, for instance, large scale laboratory. So we really need to think really hard and ensure that those are maintained and managed sustainably going forward. So we talk about building, and this is a slide that shows the statistical distribution in terms of energy consumption and CO2 emission on building usage. And this is sourced from the United Nations Environment Programme 2020. As you can see here, buildings actually contribute quite a lot in terms of energy and CO2 emissions as compared to the other dimensions. So as part of this bigger agenda within the university, from the Energy Institute, we carry out a project, which is Net Zero Carbon Campus Project, which complements to this wider sustainability agenda, trying to understand and contribute our expertise and voice from campus users in terms of how and what is the best way to achieve a sustainability going forward in terms of campus usage. So we set up 4 specific research questions in this particular Living Lab projects. First, what are the main views and perceptions on adopting sustainability at the university from campus users' perspective? Second, what is the level of commitment of the campus users towards sustainability across the 3 different themes, i.e. day-to-day life, research, and teaching and learning? And 3, what are the main similarities and differences across campus users group? And last but not least, what is the level of commitment of the campus users towards sustainability currently in comparison to their willingness to commit in the future to additional measures? So our research and our empirical work is actually underpinned by these 4 specific research questions. So as a result of this Living Lab project, we carry out a large-scale survey, and this is being done through our university's comms team and also in partnership with the Students' Union. And a large-scale survey has been conducted, and we received about over 500 responses from the campus users across the board: students, academic staff, professional staff, technicians, and everybody. So out of these responses, we analyze the result and we look at them from 3 themes. So the daily activity themes results are actually shown on this slide. So I'm not going to go through every single items on the result, but I just would like to highlight and pick up a few highlights and kind of important findings in terms of daily activities here. For instance, one of the questions that we asked, or statement that we were asking the respondents to evaluate is, I would like to continue using reusable materials on campus, provided the university introduces systems to ensure this was done safely. So we have a high degree of agreement on this statement across the campus users. So this is a no-brainer. So basically, there is a real intention and a positive motivation in terms of the direction of using reusable materials on campus as long as the systems are put in place. For example, if we look at another one, I'm prepared to change how I undertake extracurricular activities on campus and beyond to reduce carbon emission. On this one, there is also a reasonably high percentage, but it is a medium. There is also a bit of a neutral aspect and dimensions there. But if we look at the last one, since the outbreak of COVID-19, which we are still operating within this particular environment safely and following the government guideline, I have used reusable materials less than before. So the implication of operations as a result of COVID-19 and changes actually has a direct impact in terms of how campus users perceive and operate in their sustainable activities, in terms of their day-to-day activities. So for this particular statement, as you can see here, it has a much negative response as compared to the first one. So I think there is a balance that needs to be struck in terms of introducing any sustainable solutions on campus going forward. The next themes that we look at is related to research, and this is quite exciting because on this theme we have a majority of them of the respondents voicing their view, and most of them are pretty much positive in terms of this particular direction. For instance, the first statement here, the university should work in partnership with its supply chain to become carbon neutral, and we have 94% strongly agree to this particular statement, for instance. And if we look at the last one, carbon reduction would justify limitation and reduction or reducing the time that research or lab equipment is kept switched on and made available to staff and students. For this one, although we have 61% strongly agree, but we still have a relatively smaller percentage that is a little bit neutral and disagree with this statement. So I think this depends, on the nature of the laboratory and who is actually responded to that particular statement and the questionnaire. And this is why, in this particular partner forum organized by NTDC, there is a significant role that technicians could play in terms of shaping the direction of how facilities, equipment, laboratory are being managed and how they can be managed more sustainably going forward. And this fits very strategically to any university's sustainability plan and goal and agenda. The third theme that we investigated in this study is related to teaching and learning activities. So for instance, here you can see there are more kind of, strongly disagree statements as compared to the agree and strongly agree ones as compared to the research category and the daily life categories. So for instance, the first statement here, on campus, if it were possible, I would be prepared to wear an extra layer of clothing indoors to help reduce carbon emissions by saving on heating. So this is quite an interesting statement. And the observation from the statistical result and the responses from the campus users is that 67% of them strongly agree, which is very interesting. So there may be ways in which energy efficiency measures can be tailored according to this potential behavioral change from campus users' perspective. If we look at the last statement here, 24-hour opening of library buildings is highly important to me and would affect my learning if it discontinued. So this is quite quite an interesting statement, but as you can see here, majority of the respondents actually disagree. So the role of the library facilities and buildings actually is very significant. So I think the lessons learned here is not every building should be treated exactly the same in terms of their policy of making sure they are sustainable and energy efficient. For instance, library opening hours, students' requirement and staff requirement might be very different. Therefore, we have to ensure that any interventions that we introduce in order to reduce our CO2 emissions on campus for the net zero carbon campus agenda has to be thought out and designed carefully from the user's perspective. In addition to descriptive statistical analysis, we also carried out some more in-depth statistical analysis to test the significance of these responses. So two specific tests have been carried out, the main Whitney test and the Kruskal-Wallis test. First is to really look at do students and staff answer differently, because these are two kind of types of categories of campus users across the board. And do scoring tendency differ by faculty, because we in our university, we have various faculties users involved across campus. So the result generally said that there aren't a lot of differences, and there are some statements that have been answered differently. So we have specific statistical tests and result and p-values for each of the statements analyzed and investigated within this particular study. And one specific area that I would like to highlight a little bit more in this talk is the overall tendency for sustainable behaviors adoption, because in addition to technology or hard solution, the soft solution, i.e. the behavioral change, is also an important one. So we develop a simple index to measure the index of, to measure the propensity for change from campus users. So this index and the result shows that actually there aren't a lot of difference between the faculties, campus users across all of the faculties involved, and also across three themes involved: the daily life themes, the research, and teaching and learning. But from the three themes, we can observe from the result of this index that daily life, the blue bars, as well as research are much higher in terms of the index. So the behavioral change propensity is more forthcoming, in these two particular themes as compared relatively to the teaching and learning. So when we think about introducing change or potential interventions, so we can bear these results in mind. Another area that I would like to highlight is the specific dimension of energy control elements, because campus users may have different ways that they would like to use the campus and the buildings and the space from their own perspective. And this is very interesting. So from the results of our survey, we identified that actually professional services, professional staff would like to have more control on their energy usage of their space and building as compared to campus and academic or technician staff, which is quite interesting. And what kind of specific area that they would like to have more control, for instance, on the bar chart here, actually is a combination of lighting, heating, cooling, ventilation, and noise. So this diagram really actually kind of tease out, the proportion of the areas of controls by professional staff as per the previous slides. So as mentioned earlier, as a summarize, there is potential significant role the technicians could play in order to shape the direction of a zero carbon campus going forward. So what is interesting here is, I think within this forum, it will be a great idea if we can do a poll of all of the participants in the following three questions. As you can see on the slide. I think the poll questions will be available soon on your screen. Am I right, Sarah or Natalie?
Yeah, I'm just getting those up now.
Okay.
There we are. Can everyone see those?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, if you could please have a look at these three questions and please fill in your responses, and we can show the scoring and the voting from today's forums. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
I'll just give people a few seconds.
Yeah.
I think. Half the people have voted so far.
All right, maybe a few more.
Yeah, a few more seconds. I think we seem to have stabilized at 86% of people. I think that is, oh, just a few more coming. Okay, last few seconds, guys. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. We should be able to see the results. Can everyone see those?
Fantastic. Yes, thank you. Yes, the result actually is quite prominent. So for the first question, should technicians take a leading role in carbon reduction and energy efficiency improvement at facilities or laboratories on campus? And we have 91% voting yes and 9% no. So majority actually feel very positive about this leadership role on sustainability. The second one, should sustainability requirement and its related training be embedded into facilities and laboratories management? Well, we have 96% voted yes for this question. So this is a good sign. And then question 3, yes, question 3 is a very complex one. So as you can see, the distribution of the votes across the different categories here, they are very good. I mean, if we look at some of this statement, if we look at 77% actually like recycling practices, and this should be essential. 81% reducing waste should be essential. 75% behavioral change should be essential, and the others are relatively lower. So I think generally speaking, the attendees and participants of the forum today really is a advocate of sustainability and net zero agenda from the technician community. So I think this is a really positive sign. Fantastic. Thank you very much for your voicing your view. Okay. As part of the same study, we have also looked at the qualitative result from the survey. And this qualitative results has been analyzed using NVivo. And then using word cloud, we use thematic analysis technique to look at what are the main keywords that have been mentioned by the campus users. So these have been classified and categorized into 3 different themes as per the 3 themes. So on the first 6 circle on the left, so the first and the second column actually represents the daily life. So as you can see here, it is about carbon footprint reduction, reducing plastic waste, which is very interesting, home energy heating reduction, consuming less meat, traveling less, and then water, reducing water footprint. The third and the fourth column represent the research themes. So as you can see here, for the participants in today's conference, I think the equipment usage and the energy use of equipment actually came out quite prominently in that area as well, such as including building energy usage and also recycling possibility as well. So I think, and also waste reduction. So you can see here, all of these themes are really quite prominent and pertinent from the thought and view of our campus user. And last but not least, for the third category, teaching and learning. So we can see that this is about the role of teaching online, the use of heating on campus, especially in big lecture theater, and also on building. So these are not surprising results, but it's very useful to see that these are actually the key themes that emerge from the qualitative insights from our campus users. So the main conclusions from this work really is actually the campus users demonstrate positive attitudes towards zero carbon action. So it's good news. For instance, 95% of the participants agree to use reusable materials on campus. 88% of the participants responded positively on having less product choice from campus to eliminate waste. And 74% of the respondents were willing to pay more if there would be sustainable products around the campus. The statement regarding reduced hours of library buildings openings and 24-hour services actually score on neutrality for between 30 to 32%. So 39% disagree on that statement on carbon reduction because they would justify online activities and reduce physical interaction. And 26% of the respondents had a neutral attitude towards the statement, and 34% agree. So as I mentioned earlier, in terms of library opening hours, that needs to be carefully thought through, generally speaking. And a third of all of the participants wish they had more control over the energy elements, and we highlighted the insights and thought from the professional services just now in the presentation. But as you can see here in this conclusion slide, Faculty of Engineering also has a relatively high proportion in terms of control over energy elements, 80.41%, with a smaller proportion in Faculty of Arts and Humanities, 6.67%. The index, which I mentioned just now to measure propensity for sustainable behavioral change across all groups of respondents and average over the 3 themes of zero carbon activities considered in this study is 0.71. So campus users are highly likely to show initiative and willingness to new environmental sustainability measures, as the P indices calculated for each faculty do not show great variations. The university could adopt a unified strategy to implement new measures. So in terms of 3 themes we studied, there could be more potential for changes in the areas of research and daily life than in teaching and learning, relatively speaking. So recommendations going forward for daily life, 6 specific areas we have highlighted here: reducing carbon footprint, plastic waste, improving energy efficiency, reducing meat consumption, reducing travel, and improving water consumption. And these have been highlighted in the qualitative results in the word cloud, which I've shown earlier. For research, we strongly recommended that reducing plastic packaging waste should be prioritized, improving energy efficiency of research equipment. So this is very relevant to the technician and technical staff communities here. Improving carbon neutrality, increasing research on carbon reduction and energy, and increasing recycling and improving energy use in buildings. And last but not least, for teaching and learning, so it's considering student requirement in library opening hours planning, the rise of online teaching and how this is complementary with face-to-face interaction, heating requirements in buildings, heating and lights control, improving buildings construction, and improving understanding of carbon and energy usage. So in addition to the Living Lab project for Net Zero Carbon Campus run by the Energy Institute as part of the Sustainability Campus Agenda, personally as an academic, I'm also very active in my research in this field amongst many other activities in this particular area. So one example is currently I'm also editing a special issue for International Journal of Production Research on achieving carbon neutrality via supply chain management. So this is an area where we are also actively doing research in terms of meeting the net zero agenda. So to summarize, going forward, I think there are great potential for great partnerships and collaboration across partners, across the energy, across this dimension in the higher education sectors in the UK and globally. And this includes research, innovation and education funding opportunities. Secondly, working with NTDC, which technician can play key roles and profiles to ensure zero carbon campus and sustainability are embedded properly. And engaging with campus users to advance the understanding of pathways to achieving net zero carbon campus would be very important because campus users are the stakeholders within this particular environment. Increase awareness of net zero carbon campus widely to further learning within higher education sector is very important. So events like these, more interaction, conferences, skills report, surveys, etc., the LEAF projects that has been mentioned by Natalie and many others are really, really important. Influence policy and advanced case studies which support the net zero target for the UK. And this is very important. Higher education sector is one of the many sectors for the UK to achieve the net zero target by 2050. There are also other challenges faced by other sectors, such as the energy intensive sectors in the UK. So therefore, there are a lot of work that we can do together as a community to influence policy and develop case studies in this particular direction going forward. And last but not least, in this particular example, is we can also complement and advance the N8 and Net Zero North initiatives with Zero Carbon Campus initiative working in partnership with the NTDC, especially around the area of research, innovation, and skills development for net zero. So thank you very much for your attention and for staying with me for so long. So I'm very happy to take any questions from now. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Lenny. It's really exciting. I think it's inspiring, isn't it, to hear what universities are currently undertaking to try and get down to net zero carbon. I think it's really important. It's one area that really terrifies me for my children. You know, we really need to do something about this, and I think as a collective we can. And I think it's fabulous to hear the work that you're doing at Sheffield. It's really, really amazing. So thank you for your talk there today. Sarah, do we have any questions for Lenny in the chat?
Yes, we do. Yeah, there's been quite a few questions posted in the chat, and if we don't cover all of those, Lenny, we will obviously direct those to you and get back to people with those replies. But Mel's posted an interesting question around how we change culture in order to improve sustainability. So I don't know, Mel, do you want to unmic yourself and speak directly?
Yeah, thanks, Lenny. I think in part you've already answered this, but where I was coming from was that in laboratories there's quite a lot of energy that's used to heat things up or cool things down or just move air around. And historically, PIs have been given their own labs to pursue their own research endeavours as they see fit, but that's resulted in duplicated facilities often that aren't 100% used. And obviously to move away from that model to a more centralised model is going to be challenging. It's going to, in a number of ways, and certainly around the culture, that culture is going to have to change. And I just wondered whether there was, how you think that might be approached in essence.
Yeah, this is a very good question, Mel. Yes, I think in any universities, sometimes we do have duplicate equipment and facilities dotting around different parts of the campus. And as you said, this could be due to control and management and leadership from the specific PIs, because they need research facility to be very close by on their facility next to their research team. It makes sense, which we completely understand from the academic viewpoint. I'm one of the academics, so I know this is what people would prefer. But then, on the other side of the coin, from the energy consumptions and sustainability perspective, it may not be that efficient if we have a duplication of the same equipment, and then sometimes some of this equipment is not being frequently used, for instance. And if everybody would like to use the equipment, potentially one example that that could be potentially explored is sharing. Maybe introducing some sort of a sharing scheme. Sharing economy, again, is an area of research in my discipline. So sharing, resources could be an area to look at, but it has to be done carefully because there may be specific regulation and policy in place from the funder perspective, from a health and safety perspective, etc., that needs to be considered in planning and this sort of potential interventions going forward. Mel, I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mel. Yes, Lenny, there's another question from Arthur Nicholas around, the kind of sustainability of longer term electronic documentation. Arthur, are you in a position to ask your question directly?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Lenny, very interesting presentation. Thank you. My question sort of really focuses on the use of electronic communication. My bank and building society and all these things are urging you to go paperless. So I sit here at my PC with my PC on reading these documentations. There's a big server in the cloud somewhere using lots of energy. And the same things apply to electronic cars. You've got the production and use of batteries using rare earth elements, etc. Are these things really sustainable when you consider the whole lifetime costs of them? Do you have a view on that?
I do, Arthur. This is a very good question. To be honest, this is directly linked to my research expertise about life cycle assessment and understanding the life cycle impact of resources. And yes, you are right. So we cannot just measure and consider only the CO2 on the use side, but we also need to understand what actually are being embedded upstream across the supply chain. You know, the use of rare earth element, mining, where the materials come from, moving of products and components across the world. So yes, I think this is why, you know, understanding the scope 3 emissions, as I mentioned earlier, is very important. So not just about scope 1 and scope 2 emissions in the supply chain. And definitely in our Living Lab project, in the survey, we did have specific findings that relate to this particular point. So we are definitely going to consider not only the usage from the environmental impact on the usage side, but also across the entire system. But this dimension is the most challenging one, as most difficult to control. So, but in terms of the electronic document or online activities, like we're using more servers and, you know, or maybe, you know, students, is it better for students sitting in a large lecture theater, which could be more energy efficient than students sitting separately, but logging in into the lecture? So that sort of dichotomy and differences and comparison from the perspective of energy usage efficiently could be quite interesting to explore as well. Of course, it could be more energy efficient if we have that critical mass of economies of scale that make sense. But then, you know, so this is more study what needs to be carried out in order to evaluate this sort of direction carefully.
Yeah, from a commercial perspective, it's very commercially effective for my bank to be telling me to go paperless. I'm not sure whether it's commercially effective to me or sustainable for me to be doing it. So there's really big issues that need looking into in some depth, I think.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you, Arthur. Yeah, there is a question from Terry, but I think it kind of links back to the culture change question, which Mel posed earlier. I mean, I do have a question around, you mentioned, you know, the input of students and other staff into, you know, sustainability strategies and changes within university. And from the technician perspective, have you seen maybe at Sheffield or other institutions kind of an increase in you know, the ability of technical staff to join such committees or have like an impact on those strategies?
Yes, this is a very good question. I think technicians should be part of the community to shape and influence the agenda of sustainability at the university going forward, because technicians also play a key role. They are the front line. They are the frontline kind of staff and colleagues to actually look at and manage the potentially energy intensive equipment on the laboratory. And they are also the frontline staff that look after the facilities on site. So I think therefore they will have detailed knowledge and operational knowledge in terms of whether, you know, specific strategy and intervention will work or not, etc., etc. So those experiences really matter in terms of taking this direction going forward. So I think our university or many other universities across the board in the UK should include and embed the thoughts of and contribution of technicians directly on these sort of committees going forward. And we're still at the early stage. So we have launched the sustainability agenda, a strategy. We have also published our sustainability action plan. So these are all public information available on our website. But going forward, we will, you know, keep updating this, and this is a living thing. So we will track our progress in terms of the actions that we are doing. So this is a part and parcel of what we will be doing going forward.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Thank you, Lenny. We've got a few more minutes until we move on to the next session. Nat, did you? Oh, there is a question come through from John Warren. He said, has there been a study of the carbon footprint of a student within the university from, say, year one throughout their time of study? Likewise, comparing with PGR, master's students, etc.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, John. Yes, I think this could be a very nice project to look at specific and different types and category of students from their life cycle perspective, student life cycle. We have a student life cycle project in the university, but maybe this is where the student life cycle from the sustainability angle that you mentioned here, comparing them, for undergraduate study in year 1, year 2, year 3, master, PhD, PGR, etc. There may be different profile. And there are certain peak and trough, in terms of their learning experience across their study and their program, depending on their programs. It could be depending on whether these are overseas student or home student, depending on the course, specific course that they take, whether they need to access to equipment or not, etc. So all of this potentially can influence the outcome of whether, year 1, year 2, year 3 studies are more environmental, susceptible, have high environmental footprint or not, and so on. But I think this is, again, an area that we can explore further. John.
Fantastic. I think we're about out of time. Thank you so much for that, Lenny. It was really inspiring and motivating. I'm sure everyone can think of many more questions to ask, and I'm sure you'll be happy to answer those at a later date if they come forward. So thank you again for that. Before we move into our first set of parallel sessions, I just want to encourage people throughout the day to have a think about how they anticipate the NTDC can better support them in their activities, whether that's at a technician level or a management level or an organisational level. And we've got a Padlet link that Sarah posted in the chat earlier. Sarah, I don't know whether you want to post that in again so it's at the top of the list. If you access that, you can just write on that whiteboard, just start typing and it will take your comments. And we intend to look at those at the end of the day. Mel is going to do the wrapping up at the end of the day, and we will explore what those questions or thoughts might be from that particular Padlet link. So please do think about that as you go throughout the day. So we're going to move into our first set of parallel sessions now. So if you are scheduled to attend the Research Institute Technician Group session, please stay in this room. And I'm going to hand over to Jared to host that in a second. If you are scheduled to go to the heated session, you will need to leave this one and click on your link for the heated session. And I will see everyone later. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Lenny.